December 1944. The Ardennes Forest. The coldest winter in 50 years. The snow wasn't just weather. It was a weapon. For the retreating German convoy moving through the dense pine forest, every step was a battle against the ice. Klara, a young auxiliary nurse attached to the unit, had been walking for 3 days without sleep. Her boots were worn through, her feet numb, blocks of ice. She was carrying a heavy medical kit, refusing to let it go, but exhaustion is a cruel master. During a brief halt, her legs finally gave way. She collapsed into a snowbank, the medical kit spilling its precious contents into the deep powder. Officer Miller watched her fall. He was a man whose soul had frozen long before the winter arrived. To him, weakness was treason. He marched over to Klara, his boots crunching loudly. He didn't offer a hand. He kicked the empty medical bag. "You are useless to the Reich," he spat, his breath forming a cloud in the freezing air. "If you cannot carry your burden, you will not burden our transport." He turned to his men. "Leave her. Take her coat. Let the frost finish what her weakness started." It was a death sentence delivered with bureaucratic indifference. They stripped her of her heavy gray coat. Klara didn't fight back. She was too weak to scream. They took the coat, leaving her in just her thin tunic and skirt, exposed to temperatures dropping to -10 degrees. To ensure she didn't follow them, Muller ordered her tied to a sapling tree by the roadside. A lesson for stragglers, he declared. As the convoy engines roared to life and the trucks disappeared into the white mist, Klara was left alone with the silence of the forest. The cold was immediate. It felt like 1,000 needles piercing her skin. Time became a blur of shivering and pain. 10 minutes felt like hours. Her fingers turned blue, then white. Her violent shivering began to slow down, a dangerous sign. She hallucinated warmth. She thought she saw her mother's kitchen fire. She closed her eyes, accepting that this white landscape would be her grave. Her own people had discarded her like a broken tool. She waited for the end, her head bowing against the rough bark of the tree. Then, a different sound broke the silence. Not the roar of German diesel engines, but the crunch of cautious footsteps and the low hum of a jeep, an American patrol. They were moving slowly, weapons raised, scanning the tree line for ambushes. Private Tom, a young soldier who had never seen snow this deep, was walking point. He saw the shape against the tree. At first, he thought it was a trap, a decoy rigged with explosives. He raised his hand. "Hold up," he whispered. Movement ahead. The squad froze, rifles aimed at the shivering girl. "Keep your eyes peeled, Tom," the sergeant hissed. The forest was silent, waiting for a sniper's crack or a mine's boom. Private Tom moved forward, stepping in the deep tracks left by the German trucks. He approached the tree where Klara was tied, his rifle shouldered, finger resting on the trigger guard. He scanned the ground for tripwires, thin fishing lines hidden in the snow that could trigger a grenade. There were none. Just a girl, tied with cruel efficiency to a frozen trunk. She looked like a statue made of ice and gray wool. Tom reached her and knelt down. Up close, he saw the blue tint of her lips and the frost on her eyelashes. She didn't move. "Hey," he whispered, poking her shoulder with his gloved hand. "You alive?" Klara's eyes fluttered open slowly. They were glassy, unfocused. She saw the American helmet, the olive-drab uniform. A surge of terror cut through her frozen haze. She tried to pull away, but the ropes held tight. She expected a bullet. Instead, she saw the soldier frown, not in anger, but in confusion. "Jesus," Tom muttered. They left her to turn into an icicle. The sergeant shouted from the tree line. "Is she rigged, Tom? Check behind her." Tom moved around the tree. No wires, no bombs. Just a knot tied so tight it had cut into her wrists. He pulled out his combat knife. Klara flinched, closing her eyes, thinking this is it. But she felt no pain, only the release of tension as the blade sliced through the hemp rope. She slumped forward, falling directly into the snow. She tried to push herself up, but her arms were like dead wood. She was shivering so violently that her teeth clicked together like castanets. "She's freezing to death, Sarge," Tom yelled back. He looked at her thin uniform. It offered zero protection against the Ardennes winter. The wind howled through the trees, dropping the temperature another degree. Tom knew the protocols. Prisoners are to be guarded, not coddled. But looking at the girl shivering in the snow, Tom didn't see a Nazi. He saw a human being slowly dying. He made a choice. He unbuttoned his heavy, wool-lined American field coat. The warmth trapped inside escaped in a cloud of steam. He wrapped the coat around her. It was huge on her, swallowing her small frame. It smelled of tobacco, gun oil, and body warmth. Tom knelt and buttoned it up to her chin, covering the German eagle on her uniform with American wool. The shivering didn't stop immediately, but Klara's eyes widened in shock. The enemy was supposed to kill her. The enemy was supposed to be a monster, but this boy with the strange accent was giving her his own heat. "Okay now," Tom muttered, rubbing her arms briskly to generate friction. "We got you. You're okay." Sergeant Miller stomped through the snow, his face red with anger. He saw Tom shivering in his uniform shirt, the heavy coat wrapped around the enemy. "Have you lost your mind, Private?" Miller barked, keeping his voice low but intense. "That is a German soldier. We are not the Red Cross. Get your coat back. Secure her hands and let's move. We are sitting ducks out here." The rest of the squad looked on nervously. To them, Klara was a burden, a mouth to feed, and a security risk. "She was dying, Sarge," Tom insisted, not moving. "Look at her. They tied her up. She's not a soldier, she's a kid they threw away." Miller looked at Klara. He saw the bruises on her wrists, the hollow look in her eyes. He spat on the ground. "Fine," he grunted. "She keeps the coat for now. But you watch her, Tom. One wrong move and she's done. We're moving out, heading north towards the crossroads." He pointed his gloved finger towards a narrow trail cutting through the pines, the exact path the German convoy had taken hours ago. Klara's heart stopped when she saw where he pointed. She understood enough English to know north and crossroads, and she knew exactly what Obersturmführer Müller had ordered before he left, mining the rear. They had laid teller mines on that track to slow down any pursuit. If the Americans walked down that path, they would be blown to pieces. She looked at Tom, the boy who had given her his warmth. She couldn't let him die. She struggled to her feet, the heavy coat dragging in the snow. "9," she shouted, her voice raspy. The sudden sound made every soldier spin around, rifles raised instantly. "No walk," Klara cried out in broken English, shaking her head violently. She pointed at the track. "Boom, boom." She mimed an explosion with her hands. Sergeant Miller narrowed his eyes. "What is she saying?" he asked suspiciously. "Is she trying to stall us?" Tom stepped forward. "I think she's warning us, Sarge. She's saying boom, mines, or an ambush. Or she's leading us into a trap," Miller countered. "Maybe she wants us to go off-road where the snipers are waiting." He walked up to Klara, towering over her. "Mines?" he asked loudly, pointing at the ground. Klara nodded frantically. "Yeah, mine. Many mines." She pointed to the trees lining the path. "And snipers." She tapped her temple. The squad went deadly silent. If she was lying, she was delaying them. If she was telling the truth, she had just saved their lives. Miller looked at Tom. "You trust her, kid?" Tom looked at Klara, then at the sergeant. "She didn't have to say anything, Sarge," Tom argued. "She could have let us walk right into it. I say we check." Miller grunted, signaling the squad to spread out. He pulled a bayonet from his belt and moved cautiously towards the snowy track, prodding the ground gently, inch by inch. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the freezing cold. 5 yards in, the tip of his bayonet hit something metallic, a dull clink that stopped everyone's heart. He brushed away the snow, revealing the round, flat top of a Teller anti-tank mine rigged with a pressure fuse for infantry. "Mother of God," Miller whispered. He looked back at Klara. The girl wasn't lying. She had just saved at least 3 of his men from being blown apart. But before he could thank her, a sharp crack echoed through the valley. A bullet slammed into the tree trunk inches from Tom's head, spraying bark. "Sniper!" Miller screamed. "Take cover! Get down!" The squad dove into the snow, scrambling behind fallen logs and rocks. The peaceful forest instantly turned into a kill zone. The shots were coming from the high ridge to the east, invisible, deadly, and precise. They were pinned down. The German snipers had the high ground and were waiting for the mines to do the rest. Miller couldn't see the muzzle flashes in the white mist. "Where are they?" he yelled, firing blindly into the trees. Klara, huddled next to Tom behind a boulder, knew exactly where they were. She had heard Officer Miller discussing the ambush positions. She looked at Tom, who was trying to spot the enemy. She had a choice: stay silent and let her former comrades win, or betray her flag to save the boy who gave her his coat. Klara grabbed Tom's arm. She pointed not at the tree line, but higher up, towards a cluster of gray rocks near the ridge crest. "There," she shouted over the gunfire. "2 men, gray rocks, 10 o'clock." Tom looked at her, then at the rocks. He adjusted his aim. Through his scope he saw a glint of metal, a German scope reflecting the winter sun. "I see 'em." The squad concentrated their fire. 6 M1 Garand rifles opened up simultaneously on the position Klara had identified. The volume of fire was overwhelming. A cry echoed from the ridge, and a body tumbled out from behind the rocks, sliding down the snowy slope. The second sniper ceased firing, retreating into the woods. Silence returned to the forest, broken only by the heavy breathing of the Americans. They were alive. They had survived the mines and the ambush, and they all knew why. The march back to the American lines was silent. Sergeant Miller didn't tie Klara's hands again. There was no need. She walked in the center of the squad, not as a prisoner, but as a protected asset. When they finally reached the forward operating base, the MPs were waiting to take custody of the prisoner. Usually this meant rough handling and immediate interrogation. But as an MP reached for Klara's arm, Sergeant Miller stepped in between them. "Easy," he growled. "She's with us. Treat her right. She saved the whole damn squad." The MP stepped back, surprised by the tone. Then came the moment to say goodbye. Klara stood near the medical tent, still wrapped in the oversized American coat. She looked at Private Tom. She tried to take the coat off to return it, her hands fumbling with the buttons she had watched him fasten. Tom shook his head, placing his hand gently on her shoulder to stop her. "Keep it," he said softly. "You're gonna need it where you're going. It's cold out there." He reached into his pocket and handed her a chocolate bar, a small final act of kindness. Klara was transferred to a POW camp in France. Thanks to Miller's report, she was treated as a cooperative non-combatant. She survived the war, the hunger, and the cold. But she never saw Private Tom again. She didn't know if he survived the march to Berlin. She didn't know if he went back to Boston. But she kept the coat. Even when the wool wore thin and the buttons fell off, she kept it. It wasn't just clothing. It was the physical proof that she had not been abandoned by the entire world. 50 years later, in a small house in Hamburg, an elderly Klara opened a cedar chest at the foot of her bed. Inside, carefully folded, was an old, moth-eaten American field coat, with the name Tom faintly inked on the collar. She ran her hand over the rough wool. Her grandchildren asked why she kept such an old rag. She would smile, her eyes misting over, and say, "Because this rag saved my life. Not because it was warm, but because it was given by an enemy who saw a human being when my own people saw only a traitor." Humanity is not defined by the uniform you wear. It is defined by what you do when the person shivering in the snow is supposed to be your enemy. Tom chose warmth over protocol. Klara chose gratitude over loyalty. In the freezing hell of the Ardennes, they found a common ground. If this story warmed your heart, hit that subscribe button. We are dedicated to telling the stories where compassion defeated the cold. Share this video to keep the memory of Tom and Klara alive. Thank you for watching.